Well, that was quite spectacular. A big thanks to our studio band. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our broadcast live from Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate Down to Business, the only show on television. Joining us tonight to teach us about the nature and roles of sexuality, hysteria, and madness in Robertson Davies' Fifth Business is world-renowned English professor, mega-intellectual, and ex-convict Radical Raymond. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you for introducing me.
Well, Raymond, thank you for joining us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm certainly a do.
Well, that's just fantastic. And what are you here to talk to us about?
I'm glad you asked. I've been invited to come here to talk about. After years of research, I found that it's not just females that experience oppressions. Males too have faults in their personal aura, causing confusion as to what purpose one has. And who wrote this junk? In all seriousness, after reading Marlene Goldman's Madness, Masculinity, and Magic in Robertson Davies' Fifth Business, I have come to the conclusion that gender conflict is related to mental health, and that good mental health can only be secured through the heterosexuality and traditional gender roles.
Well, that's quite a claim. It must have taken you ages to exhaustively research all this.
Yes, it do.
Well, we have a special surprise for you. Someone has taken it upon themselves to debunk every single part of your research, claiming that you are just a big fraud. Give it up for the Army Marine turned French professor who only speaks Swahili that is still in high school, Tyson Wagler. Thank you very much for joining us here, Tyson.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Now, can you tell us what you think about Raymond's stance tonight?
Well, I believe that Marlene Goldman's Madness, Masculinity, and Magic in Robertson Davies' Fifth Business isn't factual at all, and her arguments are based on texts that can be interpreted either way. Raymond, you are a coward and a fraud.
Well, folks, it looks like we're in for quite a treat tonight. Also, we'd like to remind our audience to send your donations our way. This news station is completely non-profit, so if you'd like to donate to our humble show and keep us running, please give some love to our Patreon. That's what keeps us running with no ads or brand deals. So guys, if it's all right with you, I'd like to formally begin the debate. Raymond, you're up first, so tell us why you came here.
So after reading this brilliant critique, I started to comprehend the story a lot more. I think what Marlene Goldman says about hysteria, specifically traditional gender roles amongst women, is very eye-opening. For example, she talks a lot about the roles of the ideal mother versus the true woman.
Alright, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, I like Goldman's take on the fact that the pressure to hold up social standards can cause one to snap, so to say, as an escape out of the situation. And they use hysteria as a way to redefine or restructure their place in society. For example, Mrs. Dempster starts out like a true woman, but then she starts acting like a tramp and kabapa-populates.
Sorry, did you mean copulates?
No, kabapa-populates.
Alright, go on.
As I was saying, her persona breaks down after she copulates with Mr. Surgeon.
Sorry for interrupting. It's a very interesting point, but how, or why rather, would Mary Dempster feel pressured and go down the slope of hysteria?
Well, it's obvious she wasn't suited for small town life. Perhaps she was looking for a way out of being the Reverend's wife.
Yeah, well, I guess I could see where you're coming from.
The definition of a true woman also includes traits of dependency and gentleness. She displays dependency when relying on Dunstan and his mother before and after the snowball incident. Being from the city and not from the town, Mrs. Dempster has also been shown the ropes her entire life, such as being a housewife by Duncan's mother, and preventing her from wandering and causing further scandal by her husband.
Well, I guess my issue is that Miss Dempster probably was never a true woman in the first place. This argument seems extremely opinionated. She is a big city girl, there's no denying that. She's not from a town, so she could have been crazy the entire time and nobody noticed it until a big incident with the tramp. For example, she was brought up by her aunt and she doesn't seem like wifey material. Maybe she was just raised differently. Or maybe her so-called hysteria was just a different view of the world.
Well, because she is a city girl, moving to a rural area caused her to be dependent on those around her. In addition to the assumption of Mary being the true woman, Duncan's mother would be the ideal mother. She is expected to be strong, self-reliant, and an efficient caretaker. which she accurately accomplishes for the most part. However, like Mary, she cracks under pressure, which is becoming hysterical when beating Duncan.
Well, that's a good point. However, I would argue that the situation between Duncan and his mother wasn't unique. Taking into account a historical analyzation of the book, we can see that this was written about another time, like one with different social standards and just different standards around family power and dynamics. Hysteria, in this sense, could be misinterpreted from different worldviews and society as a whole.
But we really do live in a society.
Why am I wearing this?
Well, guys, interesting points from both sides. Now, Raymond, can you give us some other points supporting your side? You mentioned something earlier about, I think it was Dunstan's mental state.
Yeah, so it mostly stems from an insight from Oppenheim. The majority of cases of shattered nerves in men occurred in early childhood. This statement makes a lot of sense when applying it to Dunstan. For example, the domesticated masculine role his mother forced upon him ends mirroring Mrs. Dempster's hysterical rejection of typical gender roles.
I see. So there's quite a few big reasons that Dunstan's mental state has changed then, isn't there?
Yep. Mrs. Goldman also mentions how when Dunstan goes to war, the full force cultural and social forces shape his masculinity. After the war, he starts to experience shell shock and war neurosis. As Dunstan himself says, I let my intelligence rip and my nerves is...
I'm sorry, I have to step in. Just because he's going to war doesn't necessarily mean he's mentally unstable. There's been thousands of examples of boys going to war purely for the glory. I'd argue him going to war isn't escaping being a man, it's because of his manliness. Or, so to say, his need to be manly, after being stuck and seen as a boy his whole life. Also, Dunstan found friendship in Mary Dempster and didn't want to give that up. Nor did he want to go against his mother. So him running away from his problems is him going to war. He's not insane for being someone's friend, even though others saw it that way.
Hold up, Tyson. I'm just going to need to stop you right there because I do believe in the book on page 58 right here, Dunstan states that he ran away so he wouldn't need to, quote, make the choice between her, referring to his mother, and Mrs. Dempster.
Yeah, so you cannot infer that Dunstan did not see the war as a passage to manhood. I would not consider the choice he made manly, but he ran away because he is mentally incapable of making a decision.
Okay, but Dunstan at least seems somewhat proud of his choice to enlist in war. As he says, I spread the news as fast as I could.
He probably just wanted to let his mother and father know that he was going to war, so he could escape the Dunford reality.
Well, boys, sorry to interrupt your bickering here, but it's about time we settled down and hear a word from our sponsor, Blue Audio. The best microphones on the market. Now, both of you have made some very interesting and intellectual debate. Now, Raymond, would you like to present your closing argument, please?
Well, I completely agree with Goldman's point that male success or performance can be only achieved through heterosexuality. We can see this statement proving true through Joel, the tramp, and Paul.
Really? How so?
Well, let's start with Joel. The reader's introduced to Joel as a tramp who has been repeatedly raped by other men.
Page 134.
This way of life proved detrimental as his manhood could no longer take it, and seeing Mrs. Dempster alone stirred something within him.
Page 143.
Mary did not resist this, and this heterosexual encounter changed the way Joel thought of life. He realized that the life he was living was toxic. He discovered religion, finding success in helping others, all due to the encounter with Mary Dempster.
Okay, but how does one woman change a man's whole worldview? I don't believe it. I don't get it.
Well, as Goldman puts it, home is the place where heterosexual relations and the effects can thrive. While homelessness and wandering are correlated towards distortion and demoralizing of the psyche, furthermore, Jody Mason, an English and literature faculty member of Carleton University, notes in her research of 20th and 21st century writing that a woman's body is often used as a symbol for home. Therefore, yes, I believe that one person can change the life of another's in fifth business. Davies is trying to convey the correlation between the male's performance and his heterosexuality as well as the sense of grounding or having a home.
Okay, I understand that completely, but I wonder if you're analyzing something that really isn't there. Goldman is basing most of her arguments off of Freudian theory, which is known to be overly sexualized. This is all opinion-based. However, Mason's studies do provide some harder-to-dispute proof. However, I argue that Joel's character revival has more to do with the fact that he was shown compassion than his sexual desires. After all, as a tramp, he would have been taken advantage of by other tramps and despised by the general population. But with Mary showing him care, he knew that there was a better life for him to live, and that he needed to help other tramps see this.
You know, I'm sorry, Ray, but I may need to side with Tyson on this one. I also find confusion in the over-sexualization Freudian theory has on the analyzation of literature. So, are there any other examples of your theory in Fifth Business that could prove me otherwise?
Okay, well, in a similar situation, we have Paul. Paul's refusal to take any sort of responsibility for his mother, like running off to the circus, as any young boy would. This refusal to act like a grown man and accept the challenges thrown his way launches him into what Goldman calls a homoerotic bisexual realm, in which he is taken advantage of, only achieving success after leaving the circus of uncensored desires.
There. That makes a little more sense. Tying in mental hysteria and the uncensored bisexuality of the situation. I can agree with you on this point. However, we still must realize that the influences of the characters in this novel aren't solely sexual.
Well, guys, both arguments include insightful points of view. However, in all, I think I agree with Tyson, because Raymond, you're just basing your arguments mainly in a theory with a lot of known controversy. That being said, thank you both for coming tonight. Make sure to take a Coke and a Dorito bag on the way out.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is good.
This is Ray!